Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Every Man Has a Story. I'm so glad I got my good friend Jeffrey Holst coming back and agreeing to spend a little bit of time with us. He's a very busy man with his business, traveling around the world, but also you just finished your last classes at Harvard. Is that right? Or you're finishing some classes
I
up
have
at Harvard?
one more exam left.
One more exam.
I took one today. I've got one tomorrow. So.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. And will this be the end of your education, Jeff? Or you think you'll continue on and do more classes, or?
I mean, I don't know. I'm probably done. I've been to school a lot, so it's probably time to quit.
Yeah, you're also a lawyer too. People don't know that. So
yeah, so I so I have like 4 college degrees, and then these classes I've been taking this year are for a graduate certificate in real estate investing. I was just like, it sounds like a fun thing to do. I'll see what the Harvard folks have to say. So I signed up. COVID and all that. I just figured might as well learn some stuff. They're offering online classes this year because of COVID. So I was able to sneak in a couple Harvard classes.
I've got a high school degree, and I passed a traffic class one time when I got a speeding ticket. So I'm catching up to you.
Yeah, but I've never been an officer on a cruise ship, so.
Yeah, that's true. Jeff, I wanted to ask you, I'm watching on the news and stuff how the real estate market just keeps going up and up and up, and you're a real estate investor. You own hundreds of properties. I just don't, as a layperson, I don't understand where this money's coming from to buy all these houses and properties when the economy is the way it is. There's so many people have lost their jobs, and businesses like the travel industry, the cruise industry, the airline industry are all suffering. The entertainment industry is suffering. And all of a sudden, these people, is it everyday people buying these properties, or is it like investors from other countries like the Chinese, or that are looking for a place to put their money? I just don't understand why this is happening. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so I'm going to look up a chart real quick because it's really interesting. And I apologize. I moved away from there for just 1 second. So the St. Louis Federal Reserve puts out this chart for the M2 money supply, right? And they've done this for decades. In fact, I'm going to, if you'll let me show you, I think I can actually share my screen if you'll allow it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, do what you want.
Yeah, so you can just put that right into the broadcast and see my screen, right? I think you have to do it just like you put a regular person into the broadcast. You just hit add to the thing or whatever. There's an option there, I think. But if not, it's okay. I'll just talk people through this. I know, very complicated stuff.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Well, it's there, but now I'm by myself. So Mark has lost himself into the ether. Hopefully he can figure out how to add himself back in. Well, anyway, I'm going to, I'll just keep going for a second here. So here's the thing about the money supply, right? This is very confusing. I've been actually thinking about this for a while. So I'm actually selling a couple of properties. Man, I lost Mark, and I feel kind of bad about that. Mark, I hope you know how to get back in. Just click the link. If you're watching me on YouTube, all you got to do is click your link. You should be able to find your way back in. Anyway, otherwise, I've just hijacked his channel forever. So, hi, Every Man Has a Story.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We found you back.
Yeah. That's what happens when you get an amateur pushing buttons. So it does have something here. Like, yes, let me see. I think it might be here.
Well, I stopped. Yeah, I stopped it, but I could reshare it if you want to try one more time. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, go ahead and try one more time, but I'm only going to push one button. The other one's getting me in trouble.
Yeah, no doubt, right? Right. So see that there. You should be able to do it now.
Not showing up yet. No.
Anyway, if it shows up, it's on there now. If it shows up, you just go ahead and share it. But anyway, so what I was starting to say is, I've been actually very confused by this myself. This market is very confusing. In the markets that I track, inventory is way down. People are paying way over asking price. My own house, I think I shared this last time, I paid around $200,000 for 7 years ago. And a year ago, I would have thought, hey, I might be able to sell it for $300,000. And I was pretty happy with that. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little more, but right in that range somewhere. And Now I think maybe I could sell it for 400,000 1 year later.
Wow.
I mean, that's insane, right? I mean, that's 25-30% increase in price in a year. That doesn't make sense.
And have you thought about actually doing that and just cashing in, then renting, and just because there's going to be a correction, isn't there? There's got to be a correction.
Well, see, that's exactly what I was thinking, and I'm selling an office building that I own with a friend. I'm selling a couple of apartment complexes, and I'm selling a commercial building, a strip mall that we own. And I was thinking, I need to sell these things and put some cash in the bank because there's going to be a correction. And then I got to this M2 money supply, which is why I wish I could show you the chart. But if people want to Google it, it's just Fred, like the name FRED, M2 money supply, and you can bring up the chart. And what's really interesting.
What does M2 mean, Jeff? M2.
M2 is just one of the two ways that they calculate the money supply at the Federal Reserve. So this is actually put out by the St. Louis Federal Reserve. And, money supply in the aggregate is all of the money held by consumers. All right. So that's all the money that you have like under your mattress or in your pocket, plus all the money in checking accounts and other non-time-based deposit accounts. So that means if money's in an account that's accessible readily, then that's in the money supply. If it's in the form of stocks or something else, it's not in the money supply, right?
Got it.
Bonds, CDs, those are tied up. They're technically not part of the money supply. Now, they are used for banking reserves, which means that the banks can loan out money against that. So it does actually have an impact on the money supply, but it's not counted the same way. All right. So anyway, if you look at the chart of the money supply, I'll just kind of draw it here because I got a piece of paper here. Hold on. All right. So if you look at the chart of the money supply, dating all the way, I mean, they've been tracking this thing for forever. It looks something like this, right? So it goes up like that, right? It doesn't, I mean, it starts out really low over here, like 1800, might be, $500 billion or something. And then it keeps going up and up and up, right? And you get up to about, that's what it's always looked like. It just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, right? And I can give you the exact numbers. So for example, in 19 when they started tracking this on this particular chart in 1980, there was a $1.5 trillion in money, total money, 1.5 trillion. This is U.S. only, right?
All right.
If you flash forward all the way to 2007, there are $7 trillion. So it went up significantly, right, over that period. And then you see 2008, 2009, there's a little blip up. It goes from 7.7 trillion all the way up to 8.2 trillion. So it goes up like $500 billion during the Great Recession, right? Because the Feds decided to add a ton of money, right? And it keeps going up from there. You've got 2014, it's got 10 trillion, 2015, it's 11.5, 2016, 12.5, 2017, like 13.2, 2018, like 14 trillion, right? And so on, all the way up to 2020. If you look at January of 2020, there's $15 trillion essentially, right?
That's in people's actual hands. That's a lot of money. I mean,
15.4 trillion on February 17, 2020, right? That's the money. No, that's not real money, by the way, just to be clear. That's total money supply, because the money supply includes banking reserves that are loaned against. So that means if a bank has $100,000, they can go loan 90,000 of that out to loans, and then people can take those loans and buy stuff with it, right? And that gets into the money supply. If they deposit that into a bank, though, which eventually someone will deposit it into a bank, then that at that point it can be reloaned out. And so the way this works is you can loan it out about 8 or 9 times before you hit the banking reserve limits, right? So if there's $10 trillion, there's really only $1 trillion in value. It's just loaned out 9 additional times.
So you're loaning money that doesn't exist. What a great scam. What a great scam.
Yeah, well, it's the way the system's been set up. But here's the thing that's crazy. So you go from February of 2020, right? So I'm going to draw this chart. I'm looking at it right now. So I'm going to actually draw the chart that I'm looking at. So I apologize for the,
take your time. No.
It goes like this. All right. So here's what the chart looks like. I don't know if you can see that because I'm on a different screen. Hold on. Let me switch over so I can see myself. So here's what the chart looks like. That point where it turns up right there, that's February of 2020. See what it did?
Yeah.
It goes almost straight up, right? It's insane. From February of 2020, right, there's essentially $15.5 trillion. By May of 2020, there's $18 trillion.
Wow.
And today, well, actually, February 1, there's $19.5 trillion. Okay, February 1. So 25% increase in total money supply.
And so somebody's just at a computer screen creating this money, right? It's like,
oh yeah. So what the Fed does is they buy bonds, right? When they buy bonds, that lowers interest rates and it puts capital into the system. Because the Fed just makes up money. Whatever money they spend is just made up money, right? So this causes inflation. The way they curb inflation is they sell bonds, which takes money out of the system and tightens up the monetary policy. This is a long-term policy. Every central bank in the world does it the same way. Anyway, so here's the really interesting thing about that. So I've been sitting here for the last 6, 10, 12 weeks thinking this market doesn't make any sense. Prices are up 20, 25% in less than a year. Well, there's 25% more money out there than there was a year ago.
Right.
So if prices went up 25% and there's 25% more money, what we're really seeing is 25% inflation.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Do you think could we be heading the same direction as what happened in Venezuela when it went up like 53 million% or whatever the hell it was?
Yeah. Listen, that's what you got to worry about is like a Weimar Republic. Like the classic example of hyperinflation was the Weimar Republic. After World War I, the Germans defaulted on their reparation payments. And, what happened in the Weimar Republic, this is really, really scary stuff, actually. The price of a loaf of bread cost about the equivalent of 10 cents worth of Deutschmarks, right?
Yeah.
In 1921, it was like 20 cents. So it had like almost doubled, it was like a 5-year period. It basically doubled. And then the next year it doubled again. And then the year after that, it went to like $1,000. And the year after that, it went to $1 billion, right? Like that's the kind of inflation they had. I mean, like, and people were selling their stuff, right? They were saying, hey, I'm getting rich. I'm selling this, this house that I bought for, 100,000 Deutschmark for 500,000 Deutschmark. I'm rich, right? But the reality is the Deutschmarks were going to be worth nothing. It got so bad that by 1930, the Germans were actually burning Deutschmarks for heating fuel because wood costs more than paper money.
Wow.
They were paying people.
If you flash back in time, like if you were back there and you knew what was going to happen and you're a German and you own a house and you had some silver and gold or whatever, what would you have done? Would you have just like stay put and not sold anything?
If you knew what was going to happen, you wouldn't want to sell anything.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
So that puts us here. If the same thing's going to happen here with inflation, like happened in Venezuela, like happened in Germany back at the end of World War I, it seems to me the smart thing to do would be hold on to assets and also to have a lot of debt because you're paying your debt off with devalued money.
Oh, debt's the very best thing, right? Thing about debt is it's the best hedge against inflation because, like you said, if you buy a piece of real estate, right? I mean, obviously, don't just load up your credit cards because that doesn't help you any, right? I mean, yes, you'll pay it back with devalued money, but you don't have anything to show for it. But if you use strategic debt, right, to buy assets that go up in value relative to the dollar, then you pay it back with cheaper dollars in the future. Because that's the thing, like. Fuel prices are up 25%. Lumber prices are up 100%. Plastic prices are up 50%. Metal prices are up 25 or 30%. Housing prices are up 20%, all in the last year. To me, that's an indication not that everything's going up in price. It's actually an indication the dollar's going down in value. Because when everything goes up, my wife works at a makeup store, right? Mm-hmm. Makeup's gone up in prices. Like inflation's happening. Like people who aren't paying attention think, oh man, I just got a wage increase. Now I'm making $12 an hour instead of 10. That's great. Well, the problem is if everything went up in price 30%, getting a 20% increase in wages is actually it's a pay decrease relative.
It's really going to hurt people. Really going to hurt people that are on Social Security too.
Oh yeah, because they don't go up very quickly, obviously. Yeah, and by the way, the government might be doing this on purpose. I don't know. You can get conspiratorial on this stuff, but
what would be the reason if they were? Like, what would be their end game on that?
Well, they owe trillions of dollars, right? So the national debt is $25 trillion. So if you owe a bunch of dollars and you cause inflation, you pay it back with cheaper dollars.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this.
Same thing as us, right?
So $25 trillion is owed. Who's that money owed to? Like, who's sitting back there with those checks waiting for, that the money's owed to? Who is that?
Bondholders, people, foreign governments that bought bonds, individual citizens that bought bonds, foreign investors, U.S. investors, doesn't matter. Anyone who owns like treasury bonds.
And so those are floating all over the world then. So if the government ever defaulted on those treasury bonds, that could cause a worldwide depression.
Oh, it'd be a huge problem, right? I mean, but the thing is, like, they're very unlikely to default because they can just print more money, right? Like, if you owe someone dollars and you make dollars, like literally at a cost of zero, right?
Yeah.
You just make more dollars. They're not going to default because of that. But if they make too many dollars, they cause inflation. The dollars become worth less.
Mm-hmm. Then
people stop buying the bonds, right? And because they don't want bonds. Like, because if a bond pays you 1% and it's going to be worth 10% less next year than it is now, you're not going to buy it.
Well, why are these bonds even? I'm surprised that $25 trillion worth of these bonds has been sold. It doesn't sound like to me that that's ever been a good investment. Why would somebody want to put their money in a bond? Would you ever buy a bond? A treasury
bond? Yeah,
bond?
Sure. If you think prices are going down, right, and you want to preserve capital, and you don't want to take risk, because look, you put money, bonds pay a little bit better than bank accounts, and they have essentially zero risk. So if you don't think inflation's coming and you want to preserve your capital, bonds are a great option.
Okay.
Or if you're speculating interest rates are going to go down, bonds go up in value because they're valued inversely to interest rates. You buy a bond that pays 3% and rates go to 2%, people are willing to pay more for that bond because they can get a higher interest rate than they can get elsewhere.
But people right now that are investing in bonds are probably just trying to protect their wealth or assets to make sure, not lose money. And maybe even they may accept to lose a little bit. They might even accept.
So I mean, I think the thing is, it's like if there's a real estate correction coming and you have to hold money for a while because you want to buy stuff cheap, which might be the case. I don't know. It doesn't feel like 2008 to me. It feels like 2006 a little bit, but there's no mortgage crisis, right? There's nothing on the horizon that should dramatically change the availability of supply or demand for houses in the short term that I can see. So if that doesn't happen, then, betting on holding cash or bonds is probably not the right call. But because I don't know for sure, I'm still going forward with selling a couple of things. I'm going to put some money in the bank. But I'm also, because I think inflation might be coming, and it could be dramatic. I don't think it'll be Venezuela inflation, Weimar Republic inflation. I think we're going to see that inflation has already occurred from all this money they've printed, and it'll settle back out once we get past the COVID shutdowns and the cruise ships open back up and the economy starts rolling again. Maybe inflation will fall back to a more normal level. And that's what I'm hopeful for, that we just have this one-time spike. Everything gets more expensive and then it just stays more expensive.
Well, maybe, we keep saying, well, this isn't like 2008. This isn't like, the end of World War I. Maybe it's a brand new thing. This is a brand new period that can't be compared to anything in history. So if you try and find the answer or predict the future by looking at history, you're not going to find the answer.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm saying, like, I'm trying to hedge both directions, right? Hold some cash just in case, hold some assets just in case, hold some debt just in case. That way, no matter what happens, I don't get crushed, right? Because if you go all in on assets and there's a recession, that was a mistake. If you go all in on cash and there's a huge inflation, then that was a huge mistake, right? So, some of everything, and hope you're okay.
Well, isn't it true that right now there's a lot of people that haven't been making their mortgage payments? They've had this forbearance, and also people that are protected from paying their rent. Like, as a landlord, do you have any tenants or have a lot of tenants who don't have to pay their rent for a certain amount of time? And isn't that hurting you as a landlord if that's and what happens when the bill comes due for those mortgage payments and those rent payments to the economy?
Yeah, so I don't know. I hear stats about that. We haven't experienced a lot of non-paying tenants. We have some, but not an insane amount. What you got to remember in the U.S. is they've created a lot of money. They've given a lot of stimulus. They've got a lot of unemployment benefits, right? And there hasn't been a lot of ways to spend your money. Actually, interestingly, real savings rates went up in 2020 for the first time in a decade in the U.S. People got more money and then they knew what to spend it on because there wasn't anywhere. You couldn't go to the restaurant. You couldn't go to the movies. You couldn't go on vacation. So you put your money in your savings account. And when you're putting money in a savings account and you have a rent bill come due, you kind of pay the rent bill. You just do. What else are you going to do? You're not going to put money in the bank and hope that, you never have to pay your rent. Now, there are some people that do that.
Well, you don't want to hurt your credit.
Yeah. There are people that are gaming the system. There are. I just don't know how many it is. One of my friends, Jillian, she tells me all the time, there are tons of people doing that. She could be right. She studies it a lot closer than I do. But, couple hundred units, we've got a couple of people that are doing that. We don't have tons of people doing that.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about the stock market? Do you think there's going to be a big correction there too? Or I've been hearing that there was to be a correction in the stock market for 10 years and it's never happened.
You would think so. But again, if there's a lot of inflation, that's real assets. If there's more money in the system, then companies make more money. And if companies make more money, they're worth more money and they go up in value relative to the dollar, not necessarily in real terms, right? If you have a stock that's worth $1,000, it becomes worth $2,000, but it costs $3,000 to buy the same thing, and it's not really more valuable. I don't know. My friend Harry Dent, who we've talked about before.
I can't believe you just read my mind. I swear to God, I was just going to ask you what Harry Dent would think.
So Harry's been predicting a crash in the stock market for a while now. I think, I don't know if I talked to you since I was there in Puerto Rico last, but when I was there talking to him in Puerto Rico, I asked him the same question. He said the same thing he always does. Yep, this is not going to end well. There's going to be a crash. But there's going to be a crash doesn't necessarily say there's going to be a crash this year.
I thought he said something like by June. He was thinking by June for sure.
Sure. He also said by April and by January and by October. Not to criticize him.
Now when you're having dinner with him, you say, hey, remember what you said?
I did. And what he said is, I didn't think they were going to put this much money in the economy. He said, I didn't think they would put 25% of money into the economy. I didn't think they were going to do trillions of dollars in stimulus packages. When
they throw that money at the economy, though, does it just like tamp down the fire, or does it actually put out the fire? It can. If it puts out the fire, that's one thing. But if it just like postpones it for a few months, then we haven't really accomplished anything. Yeah,
Harry says it just postpones it and makes it worse because it doesn't solve the problem. It just gets worse. It just makes it piles problem on top of problem. And he might be right, but so far we don't know. The Fed's obviously made up of really smart people who have an incentive to make sure the economy doesn't crash. So. Right. Maybe they have something figured out that we don't have figured out. I'm skeptical. Like I said, I don't know what the economy is going to do in the next year or 2 years. It's really hard to say. So
But you're an optimistic person, right? Basically.
Yeah, generally. But I'm also optimistic in a different way than that. Like, I think no matter what happens in the economy, I'm going to be okay because I'm going to figure out how to make money no matter what. But economy's going down. There'll be opportunities for me to pick up sales, things that are on sale. Economy's going up. The stuff I own will go up in value. So I always say with real estate, it's very forgiving over the long term. So if you can buy something today, keep it for 15 or 20 years, it doesn't really matter what happens to the price tomorrow or next week.
Right.
You just wait to sell when it's high. It's really easy to time the real estate market. People think it's hard, but the real trick is just only sell when the price is high, right? You buy whenever you want. It doesn't matter. I always say buy whenever you buy, sell when it's high.
Do you see a personal home, your home yourself, to be an investment or a liability? I would think that if you're going to buy a house, you should buy a house that you really love. You plan on being there for a long time, maybe the rest of your life. And then it doesn't matter too much if it goes up or down in value. You've got a home that you really love. But
yes,
some people I know, like my brother, for example, seems to think that like his house is like his retirement. That's his
all right. So I think it goes both ways. One, if there's inflation, your house is a great investment. If prices go down, it's not a good investment. If there's something wrong with your house, it's not a good investment. I look at a house as a liability because it doesn't put money in my pocket. So I use the Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad definition of asset and liability. He says, assets feed me, liabilities take money from me. Right. So a house takes money from me. That makes it a liability. Now, if I rent that house out to someone else and it pays me, then it's no longer a liability. It's an asset. Now, banks look at this different, right? If you have a house that you owe $100,000 on, it's worth $200,000. They look at that and say, hey, you have a $100,000 asset. And in a way, that's true because you could sell your house, take that $100,000, redeploy that money into something that does give you an asset, right? That pays you. But it isn't. I don't think a house should be considered an investment. I'm kind of with you. If you're going to live in a place for 10, 20 years, you love it. There's utilitarian value to that. There's lifestyle value to that. Totally fine. But for the majority of people who aren't really dialed into the real estate market, and maybe they're going to move every 2 to 5 years, like the average person does, buying a house is not necessarily the smartest choice. There's a lot of costs, right? I mean, if you bought a house today and 2 years from now you need to sell, maybe it went up 3% a year for 2 years, right? So you feel like you made some good money. You paid a little bit down because you don't pay much down the first few years. And then you go sell it and you pay a 6% real estate commission and you're kind of back to even, and you basically just paid, more expensive rent for 2 years, didn't really get anything out of it.
And also, like, what if you spent some money on landscaping and you had to replace the water heater?
Your hot water heater went out, your furnace went out. It's not a guaranteed winner if you're doing short-term stuff in houses. Now, I will say this: your brother has a point. If he's going to live in a place for 30 years and he's just never going to refinance, he's just going to live there for 30 years and pay it off. It can be a retirement because now you have a cheap place to live in your retirement, right? Because you have this paid off house that you don't have to pay mortgage payments on anymore, or you can sell it and use that money to buy something else or pay rent or whatever. So it is a savings plan. You pay down the value of, it's a form of savings. You pay down the value of the note over time. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not a perfect retirement strategy.
Well, it's not the best place to put your money for a return either,
no, your individual houses, you're way better off to, to find something that, is going to pay you a little bit each month. Because the thing is, how many houses can you buy for yourself, right? Like you buy 1, 2, if you have a good job, maybe 3. But after a while, you run out of money, right? Like you get too many payments. If you buy a rental property and rent it out and it makes you $100 a month, you can buy a lot of those, right? Because you every time you buy one, you get a little bit more money in your pocket every month.
Yeah, and also, like, with inflation comes with the leases up, you just raise the rent.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
And rents are going up too. We're seeing that rents are going up along with everything else right now.
Are you doing that? Are you raising rents on your properties?
Not like directly on people that are already there very much, because it's difficult in this market to do that. You want to have some empathy with people that are struggling. But when we re-rent things, I had a duplex that, have other ones in the same area that rent for, they've been renting for $800, $850 a month. And we just rented one for $1,000 a month. A similar duplex, nothing significantly different on it, other than that it was empty, so we were able to rent it in today's market instead of last year's market. And again, that's 20%. I mean, that's the same as everything else is going up in price, which is more evidence that the dollar is going down in value as that everything's going up in price.
Well,
collectibles, artwork is another example. The artwork is going up like crazy right now. If you've got a stack of Picassos at your house, Mark, you should sell them now. You make yourself rich, right?
I sold them a long time ago. Yeah, I've sold my Peter Maxes too, and I've got a little bit of art back in storage, but not much. But yeah, art though there's only a handful of artists that are worth collecting. A lot of I've seen, like the art I sold. None of that went up in value. Even artists like Marcel Mouly, who studied with Picasso and one of my favorite artists, when he died, they didn't go up in value at all.
I'll tell you, I bought 3 Moulets, framed, matted, like collector, the whole thing, right? And these are nice, hand signed, limited editions, like 300-400 in the series. All really nice. I've got them in my living room. I'll send you a picture of them sometime. But I paid $1,100 for the 3 of them a couple years ago.
Wow, that's a great deal. Framed and matted?
At Park West.
Wow. Yeah,
I mean those things when Moulet was still alive, like they would have been $1,500 a piece.
Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago.
Well, the thing is, what they did is they were printing loads of them, getting him to sign everything. They knew he was in his 80s. They knew he was going to die eventually, and so they had a big stock of them, that they were holding on to, and then they just released him after his death. But also, you got to be careful on those. Look at your certificate of authenticity. If it says pencil signed, it could be signed with a signature machine with a pencil.
Yeah.
If it says hand signed by the artist, that's more valuable.
Of course.
But I just love his work.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, for $1,100 for 3 pieces of work, and they're big, right? They're full,
they're beautiful,
full size, like 36 by 24 or something, and then framed, so they're even bigger than that. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Framing would cost you. If you went to any framer, it's going to cost you $500.
Costs more than $300 a piece for framing, right? I mean, you $400-500.
Yeah, you did well. What does Harry Dent think about, and what do you think about cryptocurrencies? Because, like, for example, I've put my toe in the water, about 6 months ago, and I've quadrupled my money. I've done really well. But everybody says, oh, it's a scam. Like Warren Buffett says, it's just going to collapse. And, many people in finance think that it's, eventually everybody's going to lose their money. But I think it's almost like back during the 90s when we had the .com boom. There was a lot of people lost a lot of money, but there was also, within all those .coms that went under, there was also companies like Apple that was struggling at the time. If it wasn't for Bill Gates investing, they may not have survived. And then there was companies that are like, Microsoft was in there. Google wasn't there yet, but a lot of good, solid companies where if you bought the right .com stocks, you would have done well. I think it's the same thing with cryptocurrency.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's right. So there's the thing about the .coms is some of them had real practical applications, right? They were producing products that people wanted. Some of them were just, fun, right? They sounded cool. A lot of them still exist. A lot of them don't exist. I think it's the same with cryptos. The Bitcoin blockchain idea, the proof of stake system that allows an immutable record of transactions that can't be manipulated, is fully decentralized across a network, is game-changing stuff. That technology is really, really useful. Things like NFTs, which are a form of limited edition artwork with digital files on the Ethereum blockchain using smart contracts, very, very smart stuff, will be useful in the long run. Even if NFTs are a trend that go away, people will use that same concept, maybe not on Ethereum, maybe on a different blockchain. I don't know, right? But they'll still use that same concept to do things like create contracts that can be enforced without a governmental entity oversight. They'll create things like concert tickets that are freely transferable, and you don't have to worry about counterfeits, right? Because there's a blockchain that verifies it. I'll be able to send you a text message with a concert ticket, and you'll know that concert ticket is legitimate right away. You'll be able to tell. So that stuff is going to happen, and that's very valuable. And so if you can pick the right cryptocurrencies, the ones that power that stuff, whatever application you're looking for, decentralized banking, encryption technology, things like that, it's going to be very valuable. I mean, these meme ones like the Dogecoin with the little cute dog and stuff that Elon Musk keeps talking about, those are really popular right now, but they don't have a lot of value. They don't do a lot, right? They're just kind of there. By the way, Bitcoin doesn't really do a lot either. Bitcoin's the granddaddy of it. Bitcoin's like digital gold. There's only so much of it. People want it because it's scarce. But some of the other cryptos actually have practical functions.
Bitcoin's almost like gold. I mean, gold doesn't really do anything either. It just sits on a shelf in a bank someplace, and
I think of Bitcoin like gold and Ethereum kind of like oil. It doesn't do a lot, but it has useful applications, right? Like gold has applications too, but it's mostly it looks pretty or whatever, right? You can make gold rings out of it, or there's some industrial applications for it, and it's the same with Bitcoin. There's some minor applications, but there are other cryptos that I think maybe have more potential, like Ethereum, which is up from I bought Ethereum back in 2018 for $10 or $12 a piece. No, I guess it was 2016 I bought it. And
I bought it at $125.
Yeah, I bought it at $12, right? And now it's $3,900 today, or maybe $4,000. It went over $4, but then it went back under again.
Crazy.
I've bought a little bit of crypto here and there over the years, and that's turned into quite a big chunk of money because it's gone up in value a lot. I've taken all my money out a couple of different times, and I've still got a fair amount left. Not like millions, just to be clear, but not nothing either. So I think I lost you again there, Mark. I hope hopefully
we're back now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah. So what I was saying is I bought.
What these? Go on. Sorry. Go on.
Oh, I was just saying, I bought some, in 2014, 16, and that stuff has turned out really well. I've made a lot of money on it, but I don't have that much. I wish I'd kept everything I bought back then. For example, I bought 10 Ethereum for $125. If I'd done nothing and just kept them, I would have a lot of money now. Instead, I have 3 Ethereum left because I sold them when they went up a little bit, right?
Right. Lesson
learned. Dogecoin's another one. I bought some at 7 cents. It's 50 cents now. I sold it at 20 cents. So what do I know, right? I made some money, but I could have made more.
Yes. What's the name of the artwork again? NFT?
Yeah, non-fungible token, that stands for.
So, I mean, those, I do not get it. I don't see why they're going for so much money. To me, it's like Pokemon, or...
Well, here's how I would look at it. I would look at it like this. It's kind of like a limited edition seriograph, right? Like you only can make so many. They can create a contract that says there's only going to be 1 copy, or there's only going to be 90 copies, right?
And but it's not good art anyway. Like some of them were just like silly little icons and stuff.
Some of them are silly little icons, but some of them are good art. And some of the silly little icons, the reason they're valuable, it's because they're like the first one, right? Like the first person to do this. There's some that are like 2 years old, and people are like, "Oh wow, this is a 2-year-old NFT," because like that was the front end of the thing. It would be like, if somebody invented, like etching, right? And was really bad at etching, but they invented it. And then later Rembrandt showed up and made amazing things. Those first etchings would still be worth something, even though they were crappy, right? Because if it wasn't for that guy who invented etching, Rembrandt wouldn't exist.
Well, when I look at the value of art, I look at something like, you say you jump ahead in the future 100 years or 500 years, and you put it on the wall, and people don't even know anything about the artist at all. And they say, wow, that's an incredible work of art. Or they say, that's a piece of shit. And you could say that about, Picasso's got, I've been to Picasso's museums. I've been to his house, and he did some crappy art. I mean, really.
Some of it is. Yeah, some of it's crappy.
It's not good art. He wasn't even trying. But, if you saw the very first Cubist piece that he did with George Braque, where they both painted the exact same still life, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
So
some of his stuff is amazing. I mean, Picasso had incredible talent. But if you have incredible talent and you produce 10 pieces a day for 80 years like he did, some of it's going to be crappy. You're not everything you do is going to be amazing.
Yeah, he did some incredible stuff when he was 15 years old. You'd think that Rembrandt painted, but
yeah, no, I mean he was he had the ability to do extremely high quality artwork, very hyper realistic photo quality artwork if he wanted to. That just wasn't what he did.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he got bored painting like that when he was in his 20s. But so worst case scenario. Give me the worst case scenario. Like, say your thoughts, and maybe throw in a little bit of what Harry Dent would say, and the best case scenario, for the U.S. economy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't speak for Harry. I don't know. Hopefully, when I go to Puerto Rico next week, I'll get a chance to talk to him, and I'll report back about what he thinks.
Okay.
But for me, the best case scenario, I'll start with that, is that we have some inflation right now and it stabilizes at a new higher price. And that's what I'm hopeful for, that we just created inflation by putting all the stimulus out there, that as we open stuff up, we don't keep doing more stimulus. And so we don't have hyperinflation. And everyone makes a little bit more money and spends a little bit more money, but everything goes on the way it was before, just different dollar amount. That's the best case scenario. And of course, that's very good for people who have debt, right? Mm-hmm. It's good for the U.S. government, as we discussed. And it's good for people like me that have apartment complexes with loans on them and stuff like that. But it's also good for everyone who has credit card debt, everyone who has student loan debt, everyone who has any kind of debt, because they'll be able to pay that debt back at a cheaper rate. So that would be the best case scenario. Because I don't think it's realistic to assume that we don't have inflation. I mean, I think it's already occurring. The worst case scenario is that prices have gone up, so people like Pelosi and Biden and whoever else is making these decisions, maybe Chuck Schumer, look at it and say, "Wow, prices are up. It's not fair for people who are making, $10 an hour. They can't afford to pay their rent. So we're going to raise the minimum wage, and we're going to put some more stimulus out to try to offset that, to give them some more money, right? We're going to tax the rich and give money to the poor, Robin Hood style." They do that in an inflationary environment, and you're going to accelerate inflation. And if they keep doing that over and over again, it quickly becomes a very bad cycle. I don't think they'll do that, to be honest with you. I don't think they're insane, but there's going to be a big temptation to do that. And if they try to do that in order to buy votes in the midterm election and in order to buy votes in the presidential election in 3 years or 3.5 years, whatever it is, it'll get really bad really fast. And we could see Venezuela style inflation. I actually don't think it'll be that bad because we're still the reserve currency. But if we do that and other nations don't, we might lose the ability to be the reserve currency. That's happened 7 times in the last 700 years that the reserve currency's changed. They tend to last about 100 years.
Expand on that a little bit, Jeff, about if we could lose the reserve currency and what happened those other times, and what other countries had the reserve currency and lost it?
Yeah, I mean, the first one was really the Dutch, in the 1600s. That's the most obvious one. They had hyperinflation. There was a lot of speculation in the market with the whole tulip bulb thing, and people got crazy about their monetary policy, and all of a sudden, no one trusted their money anymore. And people, instead of holding Dutch guilders or whatever they were back then, said, "You know what? I'm going to go get, British pound sterling." Right. Mm-hmm. And then for 150 years, everyone wanted to hold British pounds. And then World War II came around, or World War I really came around, and the British inflated their currency by spending a whole bunch of money on a war that we weren't in, and then all of a sudden we were the reserve currency, and we've benefited tremendously from that over the last 100 years. Now, will that continue? I hope so. For our sake, is it guaranteed?
You think China could ever be the reserve currency?
I mean, the euro has a chance at it, right? Because they've got a unified currency. The yuan, sure, maybe the Chinese currency. And it could even be one of these cryptocurrencies. If that happens, wow, holy cow! If Bitcoin becomes the reserve currency, right? Like everyone decides, wow, I don't trust any of this stuff. I want to have Bitcoin.
That changes everything.
Yeah. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, and it could be a currency we're not even thinking of. I mean, these things are weird. They come out of the blue. They look like they're sensible in retrospect, But when the Dutch currency was being eroded, why didn't people buy francs? Why did they buy pound sterling? Who knows, right? The francs seemed like a more obvious choice at the time, but now in retrospect, we're like, well, the British were amazing. Well, the British were amazing because they were the reserve currency. But I don't know. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario. We see some kind
what would happen if we did lose the reserve currency and went someplace else? What would the effect be on the United States?
Well, people would stop buying bonds, right? It would eliminate the U.S.'s ability to borrow money cheaply, right? That's where we get these trillions of dollars in bonds, because people want to hold dollars and they trust that the U.S. will pay them dollars for their bonds. If people don't want to hold dollars anymore, they're not going to buy bonds. Then the price of bonds will go down, not up, right? And then people holding bonds will lose money effectively, lose effective purchasing power anyway, because they won't lose money. They'll get the same money either way because they have a dollar face value. And the whole currency crashes as a result of that. And pretty soon, bread and milk cost hundreds of dollars, for a gallon of milk or whatever. And maybe hundreds of millions, maybe billions, right? That's what happened in Germany. I mean, in Venezuela, 15-20% inflation monthly was really bad, but the Weimar Republic had 10,000% inflation monthly. It was so bad towards the end of the Weimar Republic that you'd go to work in the morning, and on your lunch break you'd get paid and you'd go buy stuff at lunch, because if you waited until after your day was over, your money wouldn't be worth enough to buy anything. So you get paid twice a day at work because you had to get paid in the morning, and then you go buy stuff on lunch break, and you get paid in the afternoon. You go buy stuff on your way home.
Let me ask you this: if you were going back to the after World War I with the German mark, if you had all these German marks and you just held on to them, eventually inflation went down and things stabilized.
Well, they got rid of their currency. They got rid of it. They made a whole new currency.
Okay, so they were worthless then. They're still worthless today.
Yeah, you might as well burn them as kindling or whatever. Hey, I hate to do this though. I gotta go. I've got another.
That's fine. That's fine.
But I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming. And please mention your YouTube channels.
So I feel like I have a bunch of them now. Old Fashioned Real Estate. So it's youtube.com/oldfashionedrealestate. That's just where we drink bourbon old fashions and talk about real estate investing. And then I have youtube.com/lastlifeever. Last Life Ever. And that's just a lifestyle, live the best version of your life kind of channel. And then my last channel is Puerto Rico Life, and that one doesn't have a custom URL, so you have to Google it or just type in like Puerto Rico and Jeff Holst. You'll probably find it.
Well, I will put links to those as soon as we finish here, so everybody can find them. Thank you so much for your time, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and I always learn so much every time I talk to you. So have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, Mark. Good talking to you again. See you soon.
Well, that's ending here.